And it's on this idea of canon. Now, I don't mean cannon like the weapon, like the big thing that fires cannonballs at people, whatever. I mean like the idea of intellectual property and canon in terms of like, you have a series of movies made by somebody, and what the creator deems to be canon is canon, and what they say isn't canon is not. That idea of canon. Okay, there we go. Oh, you can't see it. There's too much. There we go. Nice.
Nicolas Cage, everybody.
Yeah. Good stuff.
It made me so happy. The memes are so crispy.
Yeah, so it brings in this, like the first arguments everybody use when you try and discuss this idea of canon, what is it and who determines what is and is not canon, is everybody says, well, it's the creator. But then as soon as the creator is no longer there anymore, then it seems to fall to these intellectual property-based legal arguments, like who owns the IP? Who owns the name? So like if, well, let's just say like Gene Roddenberry, because that's what's been pissing me off lately. So, Gene Roddenberry creates Star Trek. He creates the characters. He creates the entire universe, the vision for the universe, what the types of things that he's trying to communicate with the world. He creates all that. He speaks it into existence. He picks people to be his characters. He works with them to get them to portray his characters the way he wants. And then, he releases the stuff into the world. He releases Star Trek to the world, and people fall in love with it. Not immediately, as we all know. The first Star Trek didn't do so well. But, Star Trek Next Generation and some of the movies certainly did very soon after. And so there's, all the nerds, comic book nerds, sci-fi nerds, they love getting into the nitty-gritty details of every little thing about the universe. And there's also people that are such fans that are also like authors. They write fiction. And so they make fan fiction is what it's called. Like when the fans of a story write their own stories in that original creator's world, maybe with the original creator's characters or maybe with their own custom unique characters. This is called fan fiction, and they'll say that it's not canon, meaning that this is like something nerds are concerned about. And I don't say nerds disparagingly. I'm definitely one of them. I'm one of the biggest Star Trek fans that has ever existed. And so I'm certainly participating in this stuff, and it does matter what is canon and what's not. But what does that mean? It means it's like a way of saying like what is legit and what is not legit. Like what is real and what is, considered to have happened in the world, and what is just fan fiction, what is side stories, what is unofficial. Like, what is not legit? Like, okay, that's a cool story that you wrote there, with the characters and all that stuff, but it's not canon. It's not Star Trek, qua Star Trek. Like, you know what I mean? I think you guys understand what canon is. But what I don't think most people understand about canon, and maybe I am unique in this idea around canon, and if I am, that's fine. I will defend it. I'm ready. Come at me. But if there is a singer and, they build a big brand as this famous singer, they have a beautiful voice or whatever, excuse me, and they become famous, people love this singer, they love this person's music, and then that person dies. And then that company that she formed, he, she, whatever, the singer formed, doesn't just cease to exist, because that's not how companies work in the current status paradigm, right? So the company continues to exist, and the company now owns the intellectual property rights of the singer's music and the right to continue selling it, the right to reproduce it, to make performances of it, even though the original creator is not there anymore. And, even if they wanted to, they could maybe, let's say that we get the technology that I think is actually real, Case, and you can talk about this if you have made any progress on it. But, computers can generate people's voice in an indistinguishable way. Like, you will not be able to easily tell that it's not actually the person's voice you're listening to. So it's feasible that in the future, near future, companies would be able to, even after the creator dies, continue producing music where that person's voice continues to perform. But that would be not actually that performer. That wouldn't be canon for that performer, because the performer isn't there anymore. The performer, the creator, the original person, the veracity of that work is no longer there. And just because there's a company that has the intellectual property rights to something does not make that thing legit. It does not make that thing canon. It doesn't make it real, like official. It doesn't make it legit, is what I'm trying to say. And so I think that idea, that conception of canon needs to be carried over to all the other forms of creative works that we think about. So like when you have, so Gene Roddenberry is not with us anymore. A lot of the people that he worked with are not involved in the recent Star Treks. And I'm putting air quotes around that because this new stuff that they're calling Star Trek is not, it's not even the actual company that owns the original intellectual property anymore. I don't know if many people know this, but the original company is specifically not making Star Trek. They're not making shows and they're not making movies. The company that owns the intellectual property from Roddenberry licensed it to Kaysen just sent me deep fake audio. We have to listen to this. Okay. All right. Let's see.
This is Kaysen, and I think taxation is a good idea. This is Kaysen, and I think taxation is a good idea.
Okay, well, that kind of sounded fake.
It sounded fake, but it has the essence of my voice, and that's only with training it with like 300 lines, 300
This
300
is Kaysen,
sentences.
and I think taxation is a good idea.
It
This is
definitely
Kaysen,
has.
and I think taxation is a good idea, right? Like there's the essence of me in there somewhere. And that's just one that's online, that's free, that you can train. And the more you train it, the better it becomes. And I was like, this is too spooky. I'm not going to train it a lot. I'll just send it Patrick's voice and I'll train that. And then I'll have Patrick's voice. That'll be good. That'll be useful.
I mean, that's wild, man.
This is Kaysen, and I think taxation is a good idea.
That's like right on track. Like, 50 years from now, people are going to look back on this video and be like, oh, look, the internet was just starting.
Oh, look, the singularity was just starting.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So anyway, what was I saying? So the company that owns Star Trek, I'm using air quotes because intellectual property is not a valid form of property. I haven't said that yet in this particular video, so I will say it now. Intellectual property is invalid. It is just controlling people's behavior, controlling other people's property using the guns of government to sort of spirit into existence this thing called intellectual property. Anyway, so the company that owns Star Trek IP licensed it to CBS, and CBS has then used it to make this recent Star Trek TV show with the, what I call Klingorks, and this terrible social justice-y plot device setup where, the Klingons are basically Trump supporters wanting to keep Klingon, keep it Klingon or whatever, I forgot what their tagline is because I don't watch this terrible show. This is not Star Trek. This is not canon. And what I mean by that is it's not Gene Roddenberry's show. And even if Gene Roddenberry had given even if Gene Roddenberry had given the Star Trek name to someone else and they then started creating stuff using this intellectual property, it still would not be canon. And that's what I'm trying to communicate. Like, canon to me means, from the original mind or set of minds that created something. And just because these companies can trade these, 1,000-page long legal documents where intellectual property spins all over the planet and is owned and whatever by all these people that can then use it to create money. I'm saying that just because you have this contract signed does not make it Star Trek. Roddenberry is gone. And that is tragic and sad. And that means that, in my opinion, with my conception of canon, there will not be any more Star Trek. Like, the closest thing you're going to get to Star Trek is if you got a bunch of the actors that worked on the old show together, kind of gave them the keys to the show in a way to kind of oversee the storytelling and to try and keep it original, to try and keep it in the faith of Gene Roddenberry, what he would have wanted. That's the closest thing I think that you're going to get to canon. But all this new stuff is just, it's fan fiction. It's not real. It's not canon. It's not Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek. It's a company that sub-licensed some intellectual property from a company that got it from Gene Roddenberry's company when he was alive. Like, I what do you guys think about that conception of canon? I think it really clarifies like my expectation. Like, because if I think about this garbage that these companies put out these days, if I think about it as fan fiction, it's like, to me, the pressure is sort of off. Like, okay, yeah, that's kind of crap. Oh yeah, they went out of their way to, be cultural Marxist social justice warriors with it. But it's fan fiction. Let the fans make their fan fiction. Why not? Why not? What do you guys think? KO44, still don't know how to say your name. I think it's legit if one author specifically passes the canon torch off to another, but I've never heard a blatant example of that happening. Jensary says, if the new guys overseeing the show make it have the same feel, then I accept, but usually they just neuter what made it good. Debo says, makes sense. It would be like Metallica without any of the original member. Oh, and that's an interesting example, Debo, because, Metallica doesn't have all of its original members. So, there's the original members of Metallica. Yeah. Well, no, not even that. I think there's only like 2 members currently from the original Metallica in Metallica.
I just know that I think it was like the 90s or the aughts that the bassist died and they had to replace him. Let's see. Bassist died.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I was a Metallica fan. I followed it. Yeah. And, they had 86. I haven't followed it recently. I actually haven't really followed Metallica since they started suing everybody for copyright infringement back in the...
Or Guns N' Roses with chubby Axl Rose. Yes. Slash is not there anymore.
So is current Metallica...
This is a cover band.
Is current Metallica's music that they put out today canon Metallica? I think there's the leadership of the band is still there. The intent and 2, I think, of the members are still original. So, I probably would consider things that they put out today canon, but like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like this is sad, but the guy died recently, and
Stan.
Yeah, and almost all of these characters were his characters. They were his creations. They were a part of him. They came from his mind, and he styled them and dressed them and, made them behave how he envisioned them to behave. And we don't have that anymore. That's gone. That is part of the tragedy of human lifespan. Like when a human dies, all their wisdom and knowledge and everything about them doesn't exist anymore, that, hasn't been preserved in some way. And so, Stan Lee's not around anymore. And so when they take his characters, like, this is the recent controversies. I don't know if any of you follow comic blah. I don't know if any of you follow comic books or the Marvel Cinematic stuff, but they're doing a lot of gender swapping and race swapping and stupid stuff like that, where like Thor is going to be a woman. They did this in the comics recently. Thor is no longer the guy's name, which is retarded because it comes from Norse mythology, where Thor was literally the guy's name. Well, now it's not going to be, his name. It's just the title of Thor, and now it's going to be held by a woman. They don't have a problem. They don't have a problem taking this thing that Stan Lee created and using it for social justice purposes. And if I think about it in terms of like taking something that belonged to Stan and like twisting it or perverting it or effing it up, I get emotional and I get angry. But then if I just think, look, these are some retarded fans that are writing bad fan fiction, like I can just ignore them. Like just dismiss these idiots as just randos on the internet publishing really expensive fan fiction. It
As Eric July might say, it's first level shit, right?
This is level 1 shit.
Yes, I memed Eric July. Yes, I did. Yeah. So if you're not subscribed to Eric July's channel, he's got a comic book centric channel right now. Well, I don't know. It's not comic book centric, but he talks about comic books and this stuff a lot. So if you want to learn more about
culture,
like if you want to learn more about what's going on with comic books and all these stupid characters, then go check out Eric July's channel. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Canon. I think I don't think anything coming out now should be considered legit canon. Like just because a company owns it doesn't make it real. And when I say real, you know what I mean. Like we know it's not real, but it doesn't make it legit. What do you think, Cason?
Well, I don't know too much about the Star Trek universe, but by golly, the Star Wars universe was just it's had a canon problem before the sale to Disney and after the sale to Disney, because it's like the Force, it's the thing that binds us all together. Well, it's fucking midichlorians, that's what it is. And then it's like, well, now we gotta make it a little bit more mysterious. We gotta bring back some of that original mystery. How are we gonna do it? I don't know, guys. Let's wrap it up with the Emperor being alive at number 9. Put it in the trailer. Give him a laugh. People will get it. I had to explain to my wife this morning that the Emperor was the bad guy who was through 1 through 6. And then she's like, oh, yeah, I remember him. But because they just ditched him for 7 and 8, if they bring him back in 9, all the people that jumped in on 7 and 8, they're going to be like, who is this guy? Is this the guy that they cut in half in 8? Oh, spoiler alert. My bad. Don't worry. You didn't miss much. Anyway. Yeah. Next topic. Get us out of this realm of aesthetics. Get us out of this realm, because fundamentally, intellectual property is not scarce. So it's just as much my Star Wars as it is yours.
You know, when we talk about like how artists and creatives will get paid, you know, sans intellectual property enforcement by the government, we talk about like it's content coming from its original creator is important to people. Like people will buy a copy of a Picasso for dollars, but they'll buy an original Picasso for millions because it's original, not because of intellectual property law. It's because it comes from the original. It's the original work from the original creator. And this doesn't go away just because you get rid of intellectual property law. Like if Gene Roddenberry created a new Star Trek, I don't care if it was terrible. That would be Star Trek because it came from Roddenberry. But
it would be Star Trek to you, Patrick, to you. But not to somebody who really digs what's coming out right now. They'd be like, oh, this is old and boring. It's like me watching the original Doctor Who series. I'm like, oh my God, it's so slow. This was made whenever people listen to radio for entertainment.
Authentic.
Oh my God.
That's the word. I've been looking for that word, Phobes, this entire time. The word is authentic.
It's authentic.
It's authentic. It is authentic. This new stuff with the Star Trek and the Kling orcs and the social justice is not authentic. It's not authentic Star Trek.